you learn something in school, and then once you get, you're learning certain things in the field as you're going through school as well. But once you really get after college and get into the profession, whatever you're doing, that's when you really start learning, and it can be a bit overwhelming. But that process, comes and goes, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you've soaked up a lot of the information and you're up to speed. Hi, and welcome to this month's episode of Engineering Greatness, an original podcast series produced by the American Concrete Institute. I'm Destry Kinning, product manager with SureBuilt Manufacturing, and I live in Omaha, Nebraska. With me today is Chris.
My name is Chris Garcia. I am a concrete project manager with DPR Construction, and I'm based out of the Pasadena office, but working all throughout the Southwest.
So let's begin, Chris, with talking a little bit about how we met through ACI. That goes back, I think, a little over a decade maybe ago.
Yeah.
So it's been a few minutes.
My first conference was 2014, I believe.
In the fall or in the spring?
I think probably the fall.
I think it was the fall as well, because that was my first convention as well with ACI. And I think we may have briefly met there. It may have been the next convention, but I do recall it was one of the young professional networking events that they were having. And they had it at the social establishment in the hotel, so everyone was grabbing a refreshment. And I had a refreshment, and I sat down at a table, and I was kind of waiting, for people to roll in. And then I hear a friendly voice from behind me say, "Hey, mind if I join you?" And I turned around and I saw you. And of course, it had been a little bit since I'd seen you. And I was like, absolutely, pull up a chair. Let's catch up. And then we had quite the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Like my early days in ACI, just not really knowing too many people, and also being younger, I was really grateful for those opportunities to connect with you and other young members. And we hit it off pretty well, and we've become quite good friends, and we see each other on a regular basis and travel and soccer games and whatever it might be. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say that's probably one of the greatest things about ACI is that connection with people that you wouldn't otherwise meet, that are in your industry and that have a lot of the same interests that you have. And so I guess I'll start with a question for you of what inspired you, or why were you inspired to study civil engineering?
Well, in high school, I actually didn't have the greatest guidance in terms of the next step. Everyone there knew I was college bound. My family knew that was what I was doing, but I actually, when it came to choosing a major, I wasn't sure. I knew it was going to be engineering, and I was applying to a school, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, that did not allow you to be undeclared. So ultimately, they had a dozen options, many of them very, very specific, like software engineering or agricultural engineering. And I chose civil engineering because of the breadth, and that there's a lot of different places you can go in terms of career. There's options with structures or soils or water or the environmental side of things. So just based off not being certain, civil engineering did kind of provide that flexibility in terms of where I would go after college.
Yeah.
How about same question for you? I know you you went to a couple different schools, but how did you land where you're at now?
No, exactly. So, and it was a little bit similar. Like I had to declare a major. And like you, I was good in math and science, really liked physics. It was my favorite class. And I didn't follow that for whatever reason. When I initially went to college, I went to Doane University, Doane College initially, and did a dual degree program to get a civil engineering degree. But when I started there, I was actually in biochem. So I was in a completely different route. And in the first semester, quickly found out that that wasn't for me. And here, I guess I'll mention how important it is, and a big thank you to all professors out there that are mentors to students, whether directly or indirectly. So when I decided, I kind of realized biochem was not for me, and I didn't have civil engineering to study. It wasn't offered at my school at the college. So I went down the physics road. And then I was taking math classes and was at Doane. One thing that's extremely like any smaller university, you get more intimacy with the professors in the class and also with open door policy hours. And this math professor, Bill, I'll never forget him, but I'd take him up on that. He said, any questions you have, just feel free to come in my office. So I did. And I went in and asked him questions. And eventually he kind of started turning it back to me and asking questions about me and what I was looking to do. And then he gave me guidance kind of on what he saw in me. And he suggested engineering. And he suggested actually looking at, you don't have to do engineering and just be stuck in behind a desk. You can look at being in the field, more like what you do, or the business aspect of it. And the business aspect was very interesting to me. And then that's kind of a long story, but that, when Bill had initially suggested to me to look into engineering and I looked into civil, it was like you said, you saw the breadth and you're like, it's definitely somewhere over here that I need to be going. There's so many things that are really interesting. I didn't know that I would land in concrete. I thought it could have been water or soils or structures. And fortunately, it was concrete. But it was through the professors and some of those mentors that were key in kind of getting me in the right place. So,
That's
um,
cool. I went to a massive school with 20,000 people, so I definitely didn't have that sort of relationship with my professors.
and it changed. So, for my degree to get the civil portion, I had to transfer in all my physics classes into the University of Nebraska Lincoln and finish my civil engineering classes there. And then I quickly realized, what I had was very special. It was very unique. And you don't always get that. And so that to me is something that's very special about professors that are willing to not only help students, but then, be there for them. And it was an indirect mentor in that way that kind of led me into the direction that I ultimately was very happy in. So let's go with a question for Chris on what informed, I guess, what informed your decision on the university where you obtained your bachelor's degree? I don't know if you answered that.
Yeah, yeah. So I I decided to keep it regional to California. I only applied to four schools, and my goal really was to keep the cost down. And so I was going to I was applying to public schools, and I actually got a really good scholarship to the local public school in Los Angeles, Cal State Los Angeles, and I also got into Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which was 3 hours away, and I opted to go there because of the reputation of the college, but also um, being able to leave my hometown for 4 years and experience something else was something that's like for many people it's a important time to be away from your family, home life, and kind of develop your own worldview. And so that's exactly what I did. my parents were supportive in that decision because I did turn down a pretty big scholarship to 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 have to pay almost full price to go to Cal Poly, but based on where it's led me in terms of career, I'm really happy with the decision. So
That was the furthest you've lived away from the LA area, isn't it?
yeah, I did have a summer internship in Oakland. I
Okay.
was just up there for a summer. Um, but basically, yeah. Other than some longer backpacking trips, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I'll answer the same kind of question. So, what led me to where I went at Doane, I initially wanted to continue with sports, and I was able to play football there for a few years. And so that was a big priority. And I had a scholarship for that, and it kind of gave me an opportunity to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. And then Doane is in a city called Crete, Nebraska, and it's about an hour from Lincoln, Nebraska. And so was able to transfer and move up there and was immediately, as soon as I got into my civil engineering classes, I just kind of felt like I was at home. Things were a lot different in terms of how things were from smaller school to bigger school, but the clubs and other things to be involved in, and just the number of engineering students was, it kind of blew my mind because I was in some very small classes at Doane, whereas at the university it was complete opposite. So
And what
yeah,
on the next step there, like in terms of getting into concrete and eventually ACI, how did that come about?
that so those are both kind of intertwined, I would say. And I'll say one of the key mentors that I have had, his name is Craig Coppersmith, and he was working for a company in Omaha. So when I came on and was about to graduate, the thing that was really important to me at that time during graduation was I was looking at kind of the possible avenues because I had a kind of a general civil engineering degree, and I was trying to decide on, and I was working for an engineering company. Do I stay on board and do something engineering related? Do I pivot slightly and look at a construction company? And I had an offer from one, went and had done the whole process and seen what they're about, and they offered. And so I had that. And I'm like, this, I had a good feeling about it. But ultimately, for me, I did want to try to get into something sales related. Um, and this mentor, Craig, happened to be working for a company in Omaha, and they ended up hiring me as a technical sales engineer, or they ended up interviewing me, and we, talked about. I was trying to get into something product related and ideally manufacturing related in this that so manufacturing and sales, product management that you provide as a solution to the construction industry. So I was fortunate to meet Craig. That he hired me, and then his guidance really was, you're going to be involved in ACI. So that very first year, coming that fall of that 2014 convention, he said, go to this, go look up all the committees, see which ones are of interest to you, fill out your whole schedule. Eventually you'll be going there and be having dinners with people, but you don't really know anyone yet. So you got to go there. And that's where I came across, the young professional networking events and like things that I'm like, well, this is something I definitely want to check out because I need to meet people. I need to network. I need to figure out what's going on here. And so that was really key. And then selecting some other committees, some education at every convention. And so that's kind of what got me into concrete and into ACI. What was
Yeah,
it for
I know
you?
we met
Outside?
on
Oh,
347, I believe,
yeah.
initially.
Mhm.
And still on 347 actually. But yeah, for me, it was similar. It was like professional development alongside my career development. I worked for a company that had, I think, three three employees were past presidents of ACI. So there's a strong legacy there. And they were looking for someone to represent the company you know, on various committees. And and I raised my hand because I was a big part of their concrete group at that time, and I saw the importance of the guidance standards in our work. And there was definite curiosity of how that information came to be, right? Like where did this come from? So yeah, I started um, with sort of just a goal of being involved, but not specifically knowing where I'd land. And then I ultimately, became um, a voting member on 347 and 117, the tolerance committee, which I'm particularly passionate on that topic, because as a builder, and like I've done a lot of like you know high end work too with high end finishes, and I often see where the structure and the finishes they don't align, right? So it was just sort of applying the interests that I already had and the experience I had, um, to figuring out where I could plug um, in the organization, and so and definitely, just attending and going to the sessions just was a big learning experience, and I really enjoyed it. So as I started to learn more, it helped my competency with my career, and yeah, and ultimately, I'm a little bit more of a veteran now, but I'm grateful for those like early years where I was just picking up a bunch of information.
Yeah. What kind of guidance or advice would you give to students, people that are thinking about getting into the contract and the construction side? Um, Maybe specifically focused, maybe there's, I'd say it's sometimes hard unless they know they for sure want to be in concrete. Sometimes you end up in it. But what kind of guidance, advice would you give to students, young professionals?
Well, I would say that just from my own experience, working for a self-performing general contractor is a really good choice. Um, the reason is the entire you get to see the entire process, um, as opposed to if like you were working for a subcontractor, you really only get to see that limited amount on multiple projects. But seeing how it all comes together is like kind of where the magic happens in construction. um and working for a self-performing general contractor, they have a lot of skin in the game, right? And they're not just a broker like managing a bunch of subcontractors. They you get you earn the respect of the subcontractors because you have crews out there, and you're working to solve the same issues, and you're on the same time crunch with facing the same um you know uh problems that come up. And so um there's a lot of companies out there that do their own concrete work, and I work for a company now, DPR Construction, that self performs like up to a dozen trades, and we just see all the time how it benefits the overall build, because there's just like it's just more seamless. And so yeah, I would just recommend looking out for career opportunities that sort of give you a wide perspective, right?
Yeah, no, that's I'd say a really good take because I mean I just noticed it on a job site that I was on a couple weeks ago where a general contractor was self-performing something that they basically, well, we were seeing a new product that they were using this, there's all these efficiencies that are coming around. So whether you take it on or you have someone else take it on that's using that efficiency that you could have used, I guess is kind of the short on on what I'm noticing there, but oh, that's interesting. Um, Biggest challenges or like sacrifices you've had to make going through the industry, whether early on or in the last couple years? What would you say those look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to college, I had a goal of getting completing my bachelor's degree in 4 years. And most people at this school did it in 5 years. And so I knew it was going to be difficult. Um, and it was, but I treated it like a job, right? I didn't treat it like this time of life where you don't have responsibilities and some people look at it like that, right? And the sacrifice was like some of the social bonds I I I, I left with probably weren't as strong as some other people who were, maybe in fraternities or sororities, and that was a big focus for them. For me, the focus was um completing my program with as little debt as possible. So I worked part-time all 4 years of college, and yeah, and the upside to that was I graduated in 2008 instead of 2009, and that really changed everything for me because um you know because of the Great Recession, there there were just far less opportunities at far lower wages for people graduating into the recession, as opposed to I got in as one of the last employees before they stopped hiring. And construction is a lagging industry in that it feels the effects of the recession a little bit later because things are contracted and being built already. But I was lucky in that regard. And yeah, just it being, like in terms of construction education, I didn't have that, right? I was in a civil engineering program where their goal was to teach me how to design. 2 years in, I decided, yeah, I want to do construction. So I took a couple construction management classes, but you learn you learn the ins and out of construction on the job site and with construction professionals, and um, you learn like a rough framework in school. So the first few years of learning how to read drawings and understanding all the jargon, that was, because I started on a project that it was like a high rise tower, and it was already in cycle. So the team had been there, and I was just plugging into that. So onboarding was pretty challenging, but fortunately I had, a lot of people at that company that were looking out for me, um and and making a specific point to make sure I understood, and not just understood but like excelled, so that on the next project I was a valuable asset knowing what I learned from the first project. So yeah, the first few years of any career I think are challenging, but especially when you don't, you're not learning that stuff in school. A lot of it is on the job training.
Yeah.
So
Do you want me to answer that same question?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You talked a little bit about the challenges in school, but like once once you entered your first job, what was that like for you?
Yeah, entering the first job, and for me, I would say even the bigger obstacle was getting to that first job, because I mentioned like the professor that gave me some guidance that I might be skilled in engineering and maybe be interested in the business sales part of it. And the part of that rest of that story is after I became aware that I was really interested in civil engineering, but I wanted to get some kind of sales experience. I found a company that I could get a sales internship at. And I got that sales experience. I did that for 18 months. And just to get some familiarity with the sales process, customer resource management, and that kind of stuff. It wasn't civil engineering related. It was um, it was actually advertising sales related for print ads for a lot of ag products. But I did that knowing that that wasn't going to be probably the direction I was going to go, but I wanted to get some experience with it. So then the next step for me is I took basically a kind of a 180 and went to a engineering company and did I was working in the field doing site testing of concrete and soil. So complete opposite. Sales unrelated to engineering, and then right into the field testing. So kind of the deep end of the pool, and doing that kind of stuff just to get more well rounded. So I did that. And then I mentioned when I was at graduation, I was still working for that engineering company. I was kind of looking different directions. And ultimately, I knew, any direction that you go initially, it could be a 1 or 2 year thing before if you go that direction and you end up feeling, oh wait, I should have made this other decision. It could maybe take a year or two to get corrected back onto the path that you believe you should be on. And I knew, I'm like, I don't want to make that mistake. If I my heart's really in trying to get into the business side, I need to find something. And so that to me was a big obstacle that I was solving in my final 2 years of getting my civil engineering degree. I was trying to find a place where I could hopefully land in the industry and get some exposure. And it ended up being concrete related, because we made chemicals for concrete construction. And so from there, the next biggest obstacle I think is it's really just taking the information that you're receiving, because it's like you kind of mentioned earlier, you learn something in school, and then once you get, you're learning certain things in the field as you're going through school as well, but once you really get after college and get into the profession, whatever you're doing, that's when you really start learning, and it can be a bit overwhelming. But that process, comes and goes, and all of a sudden before you know it, you've soaked up a lot of the information and you're up to speed. And so yeah, so what clubs were you involved in?
Yeah, I even though I did focus mostly on academics, I found it helpful to join some clubs. I was involved with the American Society of Civil Engineers in school, and it wasn't just like being being there to like listen to whatever was being shared, but I quickly realized that there's leadership opportunities in those organizations, and um oftentimes you had to be like essentially elected or chosen as a leader, so I positioned myself to to be able to you know become either like a vice president or a treasurer or whatever it might be. But those responsibilities um really kind of helped me understand a different aspect of of sort of like the profession I was building, right? And I was able to put those things on resumes, and yeah, it really kind of filled in the gaps, because at Cal Poly, like they really do focus on um, you know, the subject matter that you're enrolled in, and um there's not a lot of like general education classes, right? But like being involved in those clubs, not just as a member but as a leader, really kind of helped um, build my experience. And as I was like interviewing, actually got my first job as part. It was an honor society I was a part of. They had a career fair, and you know that's what led to my first job. So I feel that those opportunities are really important. because it gets your head out of the book, and puts you with puts you with your peers in a non-classroom setting, and it's really helpful for your development.
Yeah, I would say Engineers Without Borders was one that I was involved in at UNL, and that was probably, a, I mean, it was more the mission and everything behind it. Well, what we were doing there specifically was designing um, concrete water containment tanks that could be made local materials on whatever side it was, and to basically use the rocks to naturally treat the water, the sand, and the different aggregates that go in there. And to me, that was really really interesting. And of course, that was before I was really certain whether I was going to get into find something that really was directly concrete related that I got into in the industry. But that club was, like you said, it was a place to meet and have other conversations with students to work on something. You're trying to accomplish a goal. You're an unpaid team at that point. I mean, um, and I was looking at. I didn't end up going on the trip to Madagascar, but that was the place that they were working at the time, and I think they still are. And it was just a really cool thing to be involved in, and was concrete related. So, do
That's a
you
really cool
still?
opportunity to be of service in that way.
Yeah, it was, and the professor and the other students that were involved were just amazing people. So, um, what kind of involvement do you have in the local ACI? Are you still involved in that?
Yeah, I was pretty involved like a few years ago. They have like a 3-year term on the board, and I was vice president and president. Um, I did my time during the pandemic, and it is one of the oldest chapters, and so uh, there's we're like we're hoping to maintain um, that sort of legacy, and I'm still involved with the events, not necessarily in leadership, um, but like it will probably happen again in the future. Um, but yeah, we're at time, so I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and thanks again for listening to this month's episode of Engineering Greatness. Join us each month as ACI brings together young professionals in the concrete industry to engage in intimate conversations about life and work. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And for more information on the American Concrete Institute, you can check out concrete.org, and we'll see you next time.